The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and despair, but it was the silence that crushed me. I was 24, staring at a future where my legs might never work again, and the world felt like it was collapsing under the weight of that truth. Then he walked in, Elliot, with his easy grin and eyes that seemed to see right through my fear, and everything changed. My name is Caleb Nguyen, and I used to run. Not just jog, run. The kind of running where the wind screams past your ears, and your heart feels like it might burst from joy. I was a track star at Syracuse University, a Vietnamese-American kid with dreams of the Olympics, until a car accident stole that from me. One moment, I was sprinting through life. The next, I was in a hospital bed, my legs unresponsive, my dreams shattered. The doctors called it a spinal cord injury, incomplete but severe. They said I might walk again with years of therapy, or I might not. That uncertainty was a knife in my chest. Elliot Carter was my physical therapist, assigned to me 3 weeks after the accident. He was 26, black, with a lean build and a voice that carried a quiet confidence. His hair was cropped short, and his hazel eyes sparkled with something I couldn't place. Hope, maybe, or mischief. He didn't talk to me like I was broken. "Caleb," he said on our first day, leaning against the doorframe of my rehab room. "We're going to get you moving again. Not promising miracles, but I'm promising effort. You in?" I wasn't. I was angry at the driver who hit me, at my body for betraying me, at the world for moving on while I was stuck. But Elliot didn't flinch at my bitterness. He just kept showing up, day after day, with his clipboard and his relentless optimism. He'd wheel me to the rehab gym, set up parallel bars, and talk me through exercises that felt impossible. "One step, Caleb," he'd say. "Just one. Then we'll worry about the next." The first time I stood, my legs shook like they were made of glass. Elliot was right there, his hands steadying my hips, his voice a low hum of encouragement. "You got this," he said, and for a second, I believed him. But standing wasn't walking, and every failed attempt chipped away at my hope. I'd snap at him, tell him to leave me alone, but he never did. He'd just smile, adjust my grip on the bars, and say, "Tomorrow's another day." Weeks turned into months, and I started to notice things about Elliot beyond his role as my therapist. The way his laugh filled the room like sunlight. The way he'd hum old R&B songs under his breath while adjusting my braces. The way his hand lingered on mine when he helped me balance, just a second longer than necessary. It confused me. I'd never thought about guys that way before, not really. Growing up in a traditional family, I'd buried any questions about my feelings deep down. But Elliot was different. He made me feel seen, not as a patient, but as Caleb. One chilly October afternoon, we were in the rehab gym, working on my walking. I was using a walker now, my legs stronger but still unreliable. Elliot was beside me, one hand on my elbow, the other hovering near my waist. "Slow and steady," he said, his voice soft but firm. I took a step, then another, my breath hitching with effort. When I stumbled, his hand caught mine, firm and warm. He didn't let go, even after I steadied myself. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us. The hum of the gym's fluorescent lights, the rustle of leaves outside the window, the heat of his palm against mine. "Why do you do this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you care so much?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he squeezed my hand gently and said, "Because you're worth it, Caleb. You just don't see it yet." That night, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head, tangling with the memory of his touch. I'd spent so long fighting to walk again, but now I was fighting something else, a feeling I didn't know how to name, one that scared me as much as it thrilled me. The rehab center was a bubble, a place where time moved differently. Outside, Syracuse was alive with autumn, students laughing on campus, leaves painting the streets red and gold. Inside, it was just me, Elliot, and the slow grind of progress. I could walk a few steps unaided now, but every victory came with a cost. Exhaustion, frustration, and the constant fear that this was as good as it would get. Elliot started taking me outside for sessions when the weather allowed. Fresh air is good for the soul, he'd say, wheeling me to a park near the center. It was there, under a canopy of maple trees, that things started to shift. He'd walk beside me, matching my halting pace, his hand brushing mine as we navigated uneven paths. I told myself it was just support, just therapy. But my heart raced for reasons that had nothing to do with exertion. One day, as we rested on a bench, I caught him staring at me, not with pity, but with something deeper, something that made my chest tighten. "What?" I asked, half laughing to hide my nerves. He shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "Just thinking you're stronger than you give yourself credit for." I wanted to argue, to tell him I was still the broken kid from that hospital bed. But his gaze held me, steady and warm, and I couldn't look away. "You don't know me," I said, my voice rough. "Not really." "Then let me," he replied, so quietly I almost missed it. That moment hung between us, fragile and electric. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. But later, when he helped me stand and his hand lingered on mine again, I didn't pull away. I let it stay, let the warmth of his touch anchor me. It was the first time I'd felt something other than anger or fear in months. Back at the rehab center, I started noticing the little things more. The way Elliot's voice softened when he talked about his life. Growing up in Brooklyn, losing his mom young, finding purpose in helping others heal. The way he'd bring me coffee from the shop across the street, always remembering I liked it black with 1 sugar. The way he'd challenge me to push harder, not because he doubted me, but because he believed in me. But there was tension too. My family visited less often, their discomfort with my slow recovery palpable. My dad, a stoic man who valued strength above all, couldn't hide his disappointment. "You need to try harder, Caleb," he'd say, as if effort alone could fix me. I didn't tell him about Elliot, about the feelings stirring inside me. I wasn't ready to face what they meant, not when I was still figuring out how to be myself again. One evening, after a grueling session, Elliot suggested we grab dinner at a diner nearby. "You've earned it," he said, grinning. I hesitated. Crossing that line from therapist to friend felt dangerous, but I agreed. The diner was cozy, all chrome and neon, with a jukebox playing Otis Redding. We talked about everything but rehab, music, movies, the best food trucks in Syracuse. For the first time in months, I felt like a person, not a patient. As we walked back to the center, my cane tapping against the sidewalk, Elliot's hand brushed mine again. This time, he didn't pull away, and neither did I. Our fingers intertwined, tentative but deliberate. My heart pounded, a mix of fear and exhilaration. "Elliot," I started, but he shook his head. "Just let it be, Caleb," he said, his voice barely audible. "For now, just let it be." I did. But that night, lying in my room, I couldn't stop thinking about his hand in mine, about the way it felt like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Winter crept into Syracuse, blanketing the city in snow and silencing the vibrant autumn. My progress was steady but slow, 10 steps without a cane, then 15. Each milestone felt like a battle won, but the war was far from over. Elliot was there for every victory, his encouragement a constant in my chaotic world. But the more I leaned on him, the more I questioned what we were becoming. I started to notice the boundaries blurring. Our sessions were professional, but the moments between, the glances, the lingering touches, the quiet conversations, felt like something more. I caught myself watching him when he wasn't looking, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. It scared me, not because I didn't want it, but because I did, too much. One snowy afternoon, we were in the park again, my breath visible in the frigid air. I was practicing walking without support, Elliot a step behind me, ready to catch me if I fell. I made it 20 steps before my legs buckled. He was there in an instant, his arms around me, pulling me upright. Our faces were inches apart, his breath warm against my cheek. For a heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he smiled, soft and sad, and said, "You're getting there, Caleb. You're so close." I wanted to ask him what we were close to, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I let him guide me to a bench, his arm around my shoulders. We sat in silence, watching snowflakes drift down. "Elliot," I said finally, "why do you stay? This job, me, it's got to be exhausting." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Because you make me want to," he said simply. "You make me feel like I'm doing something that matters." His words hit me like a tidal wave. I'd spent so long feeling like a burden, like my injury had stripped me of worth. But Elliot saw me differently, and it was undoing me in ways I hadn't expected. I reached for his hand, my fingers trembling, and he didn't pull away. We sat there, hands clasped, the snow falling around us like a curtain, shielding us from the world. But the world wasn't so easily ignored. My sister, Lynn, came to visit the next day. She was the only one in my family who still treated me like me, not some fragile version of myself. Over coffee in the rehab center's cafeteria, she noticed something different about me. "You're smiling more," she said, her eyes narrowing playfully. "What's his name?" I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. "What? Don't play dumb. Caleb," she teased. "You've got that look. Spill." I wanted to tell her about Elliot, about the way he made my heart race, but fear stopped me. What if she didn't understand? What if my family didn't? I'd grown up hearing my dad's lectures about duty, about being the son who carried on the Nguyen name. Being gay, or even questioning it, felt like a betrayal of that. So I lied. "There's no one," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just focusing on walking." Lynn didn't push, but her skeptical look told me she wasn't convinced. That night, I lay awake, wrestling with my feelings. I wanted Elliot, but wanting him meant confronting parts of myself I'd never dared to face. It meant risking rejection, not just from my family, but from him. What if I was misreading everything? What if his kindness was just that, kindness? The next session, I was distant, my answers short, my focus scattered. Elliot noticed. "You okay?" he asked, adjusting my leg brace with gentle hands. "Yeah," I lied, avoiding his eyes. "Just tired." He didn't push, but I could feel his concern. When the session ended, he walked me back to my room, his hand brushing mine as we moved. I pulled away, the motion sharp and deliberate. Hurt flashed across his face, but he covered it with a smile. "Get some rest," he said and left. I hated myself for it. I hated the fear that made me push him away, the shame that told me I didn't deserve him. But most of all, I hated how much I missed his touch the moment it was gone. By spring, I could walk 50 steps unaided. It was a triumph, but it came with a bittersweet edge. The better I got, the closer I was to leaving the rehab center and Elliot. Our sessions were less frequent now, my independence growing with every step. But the distance between us wasn't just physical. I'd been pulling back, guarding my heart, afraid of what it meant to want him. Elliot tried to bridge the gap. He'd bring me books, share playlists, invite me to coffee. I wanted to say yes, to let myself fall into whatever this was. But every time I got close, panic clawed at me. What if I wasn't enough? What if my family turned their backs on me? What if I was wrong about him? One day, during a session in the rehab gym, I snapped. He was helping me with a new exercise, his hands steadying my hips as I balanced. His touch was too much, too gentle, too everything. "Stop," I said, my voice sharp. "I can do it myself." He stepped back, hands raised, his expression calm but guarded. "All right," he said. "Show me." I tried, and I fell. Hard. The pain was nothing compared to the humiliation, the frustration, the weight of everything I'd been holding in. "Why do you keep doing this?" I shouted, tears burning my eyes. "Why do you keep acting like you care?" He knelt beside me, his voice steady but laced with pain. "Because I do, Caleb. I care about you, not just as a patient." The words hung in the air, raw and undeniable. I wanted to run, to hide, but I couldn't. Not from him, not anymore. "You don't get it," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm not. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know if I can be what you want." He reached for my hand, his grip firm and warm. "I don't want you to be anything but you," he said. "Broken, healing, whatever. Just you." I broke then, tears spilling over, and he pulled me into his arms. It wasn't romantic, not yet, just a moment of raw, honest connection. I let myself feel it, let myself believe I could be enough. The weeks that followed were a blur of progress and uncertainty. I could walk 100 steps now, my cane more a precaution than a necessity. But my heart was less steady. Elliot's confession had cracked something open in me, and I couldn't close it again. Every touch, every glance, carried weight. I was falling for him, and it terrified me. We started spending time together outside of therapy, small moments, like grabbing ice cream or watching the sunset from the park. He'd tell me stories about his life, about the foster homes he'd bounced between as a kid, about the music that kept him sane. I told him about my childhood, about the pressure to be the perfect son, about the dreams I'd lost, and the ones I was starting to find again. With him, I felt like I could be honest, even about the parts of myself I didn't understand. One evening, as we sat on a hill overlooking the city, I found the courage to ask the question that had been haunting me. "Elliot," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what are we doing?" He looked at me, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "What do you want us to be doing?" he asked. I swallowed, my heart pounding. "I don't know," I admitted. I've never felt like this before. Not with anyone." He reached for my hand, his fingers lacing with mine. "Then let's figure it out together," he said. "No pressure, no rush. Just us." It was the simplest thing, but it felt like a lifeline. I leaned into him, my head resting on his shoulder, and for the first time, I let myself believe this could be real. But reality wasn't so kind. My dad called the next day, his voice cold and expectant. "You're getting better," he said. "Time to come home. We'll find you a job, something stable." He didn't ask what I wanted, didn't mention my progress, didn't care about the life I was building here. I didn't tell him about Elliot. I couldn't. Not yet. The pressure built as my discharge date approached. I'd be leaving the rehab center, moving back to my parents' house in Rochester. The thought of leaving Elliot felt like losing a part of myself. I started to pull away again, canceling plans, keeping our sessions strictly professional. He noticed, but he didn't push. He just kept being there, steady and patient, waiting for me to find my way back. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted him, asking him to meet me at the park. It was late, the air crisp with the promise of summer. When he arrived, I was sitting on our bench, the one with the carved inscription. He sat beside me, close but not touching, his eyes searching mine. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I'm scared of what this means, of what my family will think, of losing you." He took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You don't have to have all the answers," he said. "But I'm here, Caleb. I'm not going anywhere." I kissed him then, tentative and desperate, my heart racing as his lips met mine. It was soft, uncertain, but it felt like coming home. When we pulled apart, he was smiling, his eyes bright with something that looked like love. Leaving the rehab center was harder than I'd expected. I was stronger now, physically and emotionally, but the world outside felt daunting. My parents' house was a cage of expectations, a place where I'd always been the son they wanted, not the man I was becoming. I didn't tell them about Elliot, but I carried him with me in every step I took. We kept in touch, texting and calling, stealing weekends when we could. He'd drive to Rochester, or I'd take the bus to Syracuse, and we'd find quiet corners of the world to be ourselves. Each moment with him was a reminder that I was more than my injury, more than my family's hopes, more than my fear. One day, 6 months after leaving rehab, I told Lynn everything. We were at a cafe, the same one where she'd teased me about having a crush. She listened, her eyes wide but kind, and when I finished, she hugged me. "I just want you to be happy, Caleb," she said. "And he makes you happy." Her words gave me the courage to face my parents. It wasn't easy. My dad's silence was louder than any words, and my mom's tears hurt more than I'd expected. But I stood my ground, telling them about Elliot, about the person I was becoming. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a start. Elliot and I moved to Albany a year later, sharing a small apartment filled with secondhand furniture and dreams we were still figuring out. I wasn't running yet, but I was walking, sometimes with a cane, sometimes without. And every time Elliot's hand found mine, I felt like I could go a little farther. We weren't perfect. We fought. We doubted. We stumbled. But we kept going, together. And in those moments when his hand held mine long after each step, I knew I'd found something worth fighting for. A love that made me whole, not because it fixed me, but because it showed me I was never broken. Life in Albany was a new kind of challenge. The city buzzed with energy, government workers rushing through downtown, students spilling out of bars, the Hudson River reflecting the changing seasons. Our apartment was small, with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, but it was ours. Elliot hung fairy lights in the living room, claiming they made the place less depressing, and I teased him for it. But secretly, I loved the way they glowed at night. I found a job at a community center, coaching kids in adaptive sports. It wasn't the Olympics, but it was meaningful, seeing their faces light up when they scored a goal or crossed a finish line. Elliot was still working as a physical therapist, now at a clinic nearby. We'd come home exhausted, collapsing onto the couch with takeout, talking about our days, or just sitting in comfortable silence. Those moments, mundane as they were, felt like miracles after everything we'd been through. But the past didn't let go easily. My parents called sporadically, their conversations stiff and cautious. They never mentioned Elliot, and I didn't push. Lynn was my bridge, visiting when she could, bringing stories of home that didn't sting as much anymore. She'd met Elliot a few times now, and they got along like old friends, trading jokes and ganging up on me about my terrible cooking. One evening, as we walked along the riverfront, Elliot stopped suddenly. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He turned to me, his expression serious. "Caleb," he said, "I need to ask you something." My heart skipped. "Yeah." He took a deep breath, his hand finding mine. "I want us, for the long haul. But I need to know you're in, too. All the way." I looked at him, at the man who'd seen me at my worst and still chose me. The fear was still there, a quiet whisper, but it was drowned out by something stronger. "I'm in," I said, my voice steady. "All the way." He smiled, pulling me close, and we stood there, the river flowing beside us, the future unfolding ahead. It wasn't a proposal, not yet, but it was a promise, one we both meant. 2 years after the accident, I ran again. Not fast, not far, but enough to feel the wind on my face, to hear my heart pound with joy instead of fear. Elliot was there, cheering like I'd won a gold medal, his grin brighter than the sun. We celebrated with cheap wine and a picnic in the park, the same one where we'd shared our first real moment. Life wasn't perfect. There were days when my legs ached, when doubt crept in, when my family's silence weighed heavy. But there were also days filled with laughter, with Elliot's hand in mine, with the quiet certainty that we were building something real. I wasn't the boy who dreamed of the Olympics anymore, but I was someone better, someone who'd learned to love, to fight, to heal. Elliot taught me that strength isn't just in the steps you take, but in the hands you hold along the way. And every time his hand lingered in mine, long after I needed help walking, I knew I'd found my home, not in a place, but in him.